Welcome to MNG Research. Today we are going through one of the most important aspects of our writing research, and that is theoretical framework. In this session, one of the most important things that I want you to understand is that a theoretical framework is the blueprint, or what can I would rather say it's a critical guideline which reflects your thinking when you are developing a study. So in social sciences, humanities, business research, and most research studies that are associated with theoretical perspectives and debates, a theoretical framework is very important. And also in some studies, they utilize conceptual frameworks. So one of the most important issues that we'll be discussing is to help you to understand how to write a theoretical framework. But of course, before you know how to write a theoretical framework, you need to understand how to choose the best theory for your study. So I just want you to pay attention, stay tuned, and don't interrupt the session. We'll give you an opportunity and the time to ask questions. So I will hand over this time to Dr. Moringa to take you through the processes and to guide you in some of the most important issues there is when it comes to choosing the right theoretical framework and developing your theoretical framework or a conceptual framework for your study. Stay tuned.
Developing a theoretical framework using AI tools requires one to understand the fundamentals of a theoretical framework. This calls a researcher to understand the traditional ways of developing and writing a theoretical framework for their PhD, their master's, or their honors. First things first, we need to define and understand the importance of a theoretical framework. Basically, I can define a theoretical framework as a foundational component of a PhD thesis, where it provides a lens through which the research problem is viewed and analyzed, grounding the study in existing theories and concepts. This framework helps to contextualize the research within the broader academic discourse and guides the methodology and interpretation of the findings. The various importance of a theoretical framework needs to be contextualized and to be given prominence. We need to discuss them before we delve into the actual writing of the theoretical framework using either traditional means or the advanced means of AI. So firstly, the theoretical framework helps the researcher to contextualize the study. It situates the research within the existing literature by highlighting how the study contributes to or challenges current understandings. Secondly, it offers guidance and a structured approach to examining the research problems by shaping the research questions, hypotheses, and methodology. It also allows and ensures that there is consistency within the study and that the study is focused and coherent. It also aligns all parts of the research process with established theoretical principles. Lastly, theoretical framework is very crucial and important for interpreting the research findings of the study. So it aids in the interpreting of the research results by providing a basis for explaining and understanding the findings. Without understanding these key important points of a theoretical framework, it is very difficult for one to actually understand how to employ a theoretical framework or deploy it within their study, let alone using AI tools. For developing a theoretical framework using traditional means or AI, researchers need to begin by understanding the various steps that are required to develop such. Firstly, the researcher needs to identify the main concepts and variables that are relevant to their research problem. These should be drawn from your literature review and should represent the core ideas that your study will explore. Secondly, there is need to conduct a thorough review of the existing literature to understand how these concepts have been defined by other researchers, have been explored and measured in previous studies. This helps to identify gaps and establish the theoretical foundations of your study. Thirdly, there is need for the researcher to choose one or more theories that they've identified in the previous step that best explains the relationship between the concepts in your research. These theories should be well established and relevant to your field of study. Lastly, researchers need to clearly articulate how the selected theories and concepts are related. This then involves specifying the relationship between variables and how these will be investigated in your research. So in a nutshell, what are we saying? You need to have the theories developed from your literature review. Based on the theoretical framework that you have formulated, you need now to formulate hypotheses or research questions that your study will test. In qualitative studies, debates are you don't use hypotheses. Some scholars prefer to use hypotheses, but that's not the discussion for this presentation. This should be, or your question, they should be directly derived from the theoretical relationships identified. Then when you have developed the hypothesis, you need to create a diagram or a framework that create a visual representation of your theoretical framework. This can be in the form of a conceptual model or a diagram that illustrates the relationship between the key concepts and variables. There are various softwares that one can use to develop diagrams or flowcharts. You need also to ensure that all components of your research, including your methodology, data collection, and analysis, are aligned with the theoretical framework. This consistency helps to maintain the focus and coherence of your study. Lastly, you need to articulate the framework. Remember, we said you need to develop a framework or a diagram. So you need to write a detailed description of your theoretical framework in your thesis by explaining the theories and concepts that you have chosen, the relationship between them, and how they inform your research questions and hypotheses. You need to ensure that there is an interrelationship between the concepts and the hypothesis and the methodology that you have chosen. Until then, you have not effectively developed a theoretical framework. So in order for you to come up with a good approach to starting your theoretical framework using AI, just like in a traditional approach of doing a theoretical framework, you need to approach the platforms with research questions. Not research questions per se, but you need to create key questions that you use to get to that platform. So the platform that we're going to be using in this particular case is Consensus. But Consensus, like I said, it works with questions. So before we get to Consensus, what we're going to do, I created a hypothetical theory that I'm going to be using. According to my knowledge and according to my expertise, I've used framing theory extensively in my PhD and in my writings and in my publications. So the first question that we need to do, or we need to ask ourselves when we are writing a theoretical framework, is what is the origins of that theory? Who invented the theory? Secondly, its definitions. You need at least 5 authors who attempted to define the theory. Then when you've done that, you need to choose a working definition, but that's not for now. We'll show it and explain that when we get to ChatGPT. The third one is you need to ask yourself its application. Where has the theory been used and who used it and what was missing when it was used? That is the gaps. The fourth thing that you need to ask yourself is the most recent application / developments of the theory and examples. Now this needs to be related directly to your study. So the theory that I've chosen, the framing theory, I'm looking at the presentation. For instance, I'm looking at the presentation of women in the newspaper, in South African news, in the South African newspapers or in South African television. So what you need to do is, when we're talking about the recent application or development, you need to look at the most recent authors that have applied the same theory in related to the aspect or to the subject of women representation in television or newspaper. Right, so those are the questions that you're asking on Consensus. Those of you who are not familiar with Consensus, we'll move into Consensus in the next section. then you need to answer the limitations. What are the limitations of the theory? What are the strengths of the theory? What are limitations? By limitations, we're saying what has not been done or where has it not been applied, right? And that speaks to the gaps that are left in the theory. So you'd say it has not been fully applied in studies related to mine. Then lastly, you need to come up with the justification of the theory and its application to your study or your particular study. And to do this, you need to have your research question in mind or your research objectives in mind throughout the process. As I was saying, the best way to get results that are credible and that are informed by previous research and scholarly is to use consensus. Consensus is one of the most used platforms and it generates highly cited material. For you to get best results, you need to approach consensus with your research questions. In the case of a literature review, you might need to watch our session that we did, our workshop that we did on literature review. You can check it on YouTube. In this particular case, we're focusing on the theoretical framework only. So we're getting into it. Basically, this is it. This is the front page, the home page of consensus. You have a section, a tab, where you can enter the question and they synthesize, and these are key questions, examples of questions that you can use. Does creatine help build muscle? What are the benefits of mindfulness? Do direct cash transfer reduce poverty? So these are just the examples of the questions that you can use. In our particular case, we're interested in generating literature that focuses on the origins of the framing theory. We copy and paste our question. What are the origins of the framing media theory? Then we click search. What shows up on the screen is the summary, right? It tells you that it has analyzed 5 papers. So those are the most highly papers that has been analyzed. Then it tells this is the summary. So what is the summary? It says the studies that have been analyzed suggest that the origins of framing media theory can be traced back to Patterson's paper in 1955, Goffman's 1974 framing analysis, and the work of sociologists and linguists in the 1970s. So that's basically the summaries of what the origins of the paper are. So how do we get to retrieve and get the answers that we require? So each and every tab that shows up here, this is the first article that showed up, the framing project, a bridging model for framing media research. So this is the answer. Framing media theory is a popular concept that relates to political strategy and suggests intentionality on the part of the framer. So this is in 2007. You would recall, I would also recommend you to go and watch our literature review, writing literature review workshop using AI. There are filters. We went through this section where there are filters. You can adjust the years, right? So we want, because this is a theoretical framework section, we can use classic theory. So we select all, anything, because the theory was developed long time back. So we need to find its origins. We have, this is highly cited. You would see that it has been cited by 597 citations. It shows that this is a very good and credible source, right? If you click here, you get a study snapshot of what the study focused on, etc., etc. Then you go down to all the papers that came out, right? This is a list of the most highly cited papers that answer the question that we ask. Framing is a political communication research is fragmented. It lacks a commonly shared theoretical leading model leading to conceptual and operational problems. So these papers that show up, they have here and there the origins, or captured or discuss the origins of the framing theory. So when we've done this, what we need to do is we need to open each and every paper. We click on the paper. After you've clicked, you'd find the information about the paper. I recommend you, as you are writing or as you're compiling the theoretical framework, you actually need to copy and paste citation. So we copy and paste the citation. I've copied it to a different page, right? I've exported it, right? So this is the answer that we have. So you copy and paste this again to a separate page. So what I'm doing in the background, I'm creating what we call an annotated biography. So it begins with the citation, then you put the information of what the answer is. Right, that's what we're going to be showing in the next session. So you do that for all the scholars or the studies that have shown up. There's 5 of them. So we'll move to the next one, right? Then we take it. This one says framing theory was first seen in the Anthropologist Besta paper, a theory of play and fantasy published in 1955. This is the answer that we need. So we copy and paste. We copy the source. You can choose you want APA, MLA, Chicago, Harvard, or BBTEX. Then we copy. We're saying we need Harvard. Then we copy and paste. We copy to the page. I've pasted it to the page, right? Then we copy here below the citation. I copy the answer, and then I copy the key takeaway. So I want to ask, what is the key takeaway? So key takeaway is the basic summary or the key finding of the paper. This paper, we are not so much interested in it, but if we were, that will be in the literature review, right? Then we are doing this for all the papers that we have that showed up. This one says the origins of framing media theory can be traced back to 1970, when a sociologist and linguist independently assigned a technical meaning to the term frame. So this is a most recent study, 2023, right? So we're doing that for all these papers that showed up here. So when I'm done here, I'll show you how the paper would look like. So this is the first draft of our theoretical framework. So when I'm done, I'm copying and pasting, I'm copying and pasting, and I'm copying and pasting. When I'm done, I will show you how the first draft look like for that particular question. Then we move to the next question of the 6 questions. So you need to do the same approach, the same process for all the 6 questions that you have. Then, so after this, I'm showing you the first draft after I've employed all the questions that we have, how the paper would look like. So this is our draft, the first draft of the questions that we're copying for the responses. So you'd see what is the origins of the theory. So this is what came out. Remember, we were copying and pasting the references, and we copied and pasted the answer from consensus. We did that for all the sources, right? So the next step that you need to embark on is to clean this section. So I'm going to use this example and clean this section so that we'll take it further to the next step when we want to develop the origins, right? So here forms our topic sentence, right? These are the key synthesis of the studies, the 5 studies that were analyzed, and we took this from consensus. From then, so we need to clean the document according to Harvard style. So you know, with Harvard style, if you go to our workshop on literature review, it's already available on YouTube. It'll tell you how to arrange your in-text using Harvard style, right? So we're cleaning it, we're removing all this information here, but do not discard it. You need to keep it safe for your reference list. We're cleaning the work. So we're actually engaging in the first or initial steps of coming up with the explanation of the origins of the theory, the framing theory according to scholars. We're cleaning this. We're using Harvard. You know it's here. It's author surname and brackets, and author surname and year in the brackets. We move on to the next one. We're cleaning it. We remove the initials. We need to be very careful with the punctuations. We're cleaning it. Cleaning it. Punctuation is very important when we're dealing with writing. Right, so this is how it looks like. Then you can decide or elect to make it one paragraph if you want to. this is the paragraph that I said you can elect to lump everything, the findings or the answers that emerged from consensus into one paragraph. But this is not a clean paragraph. It is very dirty and it needs to be reworked. If I can read it for you, you would find that there's punctuation errors, there's grammatical errors. It's just not clean enough for you to submit it as a theoretical framework. Right. So what do we do next? Remember, we're doing this for all the 6 questions that we have. The second question focused on its definition, then you choose a working definition. So you clean this up as well and make it everything. I'm not gonna go down through into it. I'm just showing you that you need to do that for all the 6 questions. It's applications. So these areas that are highlighted in yellow, they are very important because they will form the subheadings of a theoretical framework. So for example, your first heading will be origins now, the origins of the theory, going to the definitions and working definition, then the recent application of the theory, then you go to the development of the theory, who has expanded on the theory, then last, the limitations and the theory and the justification of the theory. So these here highlighted areas in yellow, they will form the headings for your theory. So what do we do with this paragraph that we have put together? We introducing a new approach or a new platform, which is ChatGPT, that will assist us to clean the paragraph. Why are we introducing ChatGPT at this stage and not introducing or starting with ChatGPT? Is because we want to develop an academically sound theoretical framework that is based and informed by critical studies and citable literature and sources. So we have drawn those from consensus. Now what we're doing, we are importing this or exporting this to ChatGPT so that it can clean all our paragraphs. So I'm going to export this document to ChatGPT to clean this up so that we can have a clean document that is flowing and academically sound. Right, this is ChatGPT homepage. I'm sure this is not a new phenomenon or a new page for most of us. We've here and there used it, which is a good thing. But what is the most important is how have you used it and how to use it to develop your theoretical framework. More often than not, people who develop their theoretical framework, what they do is, if you're given an assignment, you just take an assignment, the question, then you go and punch it on ChatGPT and expect it to write the theory for you. Well, sadly, ChatGPT will not produce the kind of work at master's or PhD level. What you need is, you need to import the document that we have claimed, that we have developed, the first draft from consensus. You'd remember the document that I was just sharing. So ChatGPT has that feature. Depending which ChatGPT you're using, you need to click here, then you attach the document, or you can choose to copy and paste. Right, so what we are going to do in this particular case, most of us are familiar with using ChatGPT, so I'm not going to get into the depth of attaching, copying and pasting and stuff like that. What I'm going to show you is that I'm going to show you some commands that you need to use when you are developing or cleaning up that theoretical framework and what comes out. So this is what I'm going to show you right now, right away. I was saying that you need to know some specific commands for you to produce the best outcomes or results from ChatGPT. So this is the almost final step of our theoretical framework. Remember, the first was the origins, then we go to the definitions, etc., etc. So this is what the command that we used in line with the first question. So we copied and pasted that dirty work that was not cleaned on ChatGPT and say, using this information below, discuss the debates on the origins of the framing theory. So this is what emerged. The debates on the origins of framing theory revolve around different perspectives on when and how the theory was developed and which scholars were instrumental in its formation. These debates highlight the interdisciplinary nature of framing theory and its evolution through various academic fields. So what I want you to see is how detailed this information is. And this information was not generated by ChatGPT. This information we generated in the previous section from consensus. So it's not similar to when you just go to ChatGPT and enter this command. It's actually based on figures and research and outcomes that are credible and cited by other scholars. So it writes to you here and it gives you these are credible sources. These are credible sources that can be cited, and we have the reference list of all these. So it gives you all the debates. Now it has cleaned the work. There are debates on the origins, right? If you move on to the second question, which we are looking at the definitions of the theory. So the ChatGPT command was using the information below, write a discussion on the definitions of framing theory, then suggest a working and best definition. So it goes through all the definitions from the scholars that we've selected, 2003, Cato, then it synthesizes the definitions, right? Then it says, therefore, the framing theory can be understood as a multifaceted concept that examines how communication sources construct and emphasize certain aspects of an issue, influencing audience perception, attitudes, and behavior. Each definition highlights different perspectives. So now, for the purposes of our study, this will become our working definition that we will use. So ChatGPT has used what we have provided it to clean it up, and then it has synthesizes the definitions for us so that we can come up with a definition. So you move again to the third question. Using the information below, write a discussion on the previous application of the framing theory. This is what it produces. So this work, I want to emphasize, was not produced by ChatGPT. It is work produced by consensus but cleaned by ChatGPT, right? You go to the fourth question. Using the information below, write a discussion on the recent studies that use the framing theory and expose the gaps. Now, in this particular case, when you're writing a PhD thesis or a master's thesis, when you're discussing the theory, you need to look at who has used the theory and what have they not done when they were applying the theory. So this is what we have. This is the outcome that we have, exposing the gaps. Then the second from last is using the information below. Remember, you're copying that what you have gathered from consensus. Write a discussion on the limitations of the theory. Remember, we said you need to have a section when you decide where you discuss the limitations of the theory. Then I'm not gonna get into that, but what I want to emphasize or stress on is the command on the justification of the theory. So in a theoretical framework, you need to make sure that after everything is said and done, you need to justify why the theory is applicable to your study. So normally researchers in social science, they advise to have a table that links the research question, the theory tenets, application, explanation, and the hypothetical questions that you've used. Right, so this is the command we used after we've entered everything on ChatGPT. We say draw a table for the justification of the theory. The table must have hypothetical questions. Now, not hypothetical question in this particular case, because if you're doing your study, you actually have the questions and the theory tenets and application and explanation. So this is what emerged. So this is how the table looks like. It looks at the question and tells you the media theory, the tenets of the framing theory and its application on a policy or on a study, then explanation, then forget about the hypothetical question that was not supposed to be there. Right, so basically, this is it for your developing a theoretical framework. So what you need to do after this, the table, you can't deploy a table that is not accompanied by an explanation. So you need to explain it. So this is basically it for today, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the session and the presentation of how to do a theoretical framework using AI. So we've used consensus to gather the sources and the information. then we have deployed it or imported it on ChatGPT so that it can clean it. But that's not the end, because this work, if you submit it as it is, number one, you are at the risk of being flagged for turnitin, which is plagiarism. Number two, this work has not been human written, so you need actually to go down through it, the work. Now you need to clean the final document. What do? You need to clean the final document. You need to paraphrase in your own words. This is different from you typing a question on ChatGPT and develop the answer, then you copy it and paste it. This is based on academic research that has been tested and tried. Again, I want to stress and emphasize that this work cannot be submitted as is. This work needs to be cleaned, and the process of cleaning it requires you to read and rewrite and paraphrase using your own words. Not to take it to Quillbot, not to take it to humanize, because still you are not writing the work. So the purpose of what we have done is to give you a head start to write the work using these AI tools so that it can be structured and focused on your particular study, on your particular theory. Then when all that is done, you need to paraphrase the work. I emphasize, you cannot submit this work as it is. Please paraphrase and write in your own words. Hope you have enjoyed the presentation. I'm opening the floor for question and answers. Thank you very much for attending our session. Hope you have learned, and we look forward to more engagements with you. Hang on and wait for our next section that we'll be dealing with writing the methodology using AI tools.